The world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are strong at the broken places. Ernest Hemingway. No one walks through life entirely intact. Humans grow through loss. A love that left too soon, a childhood lacking tenderness, or a betrayal that makes trust collapse. Like a house with a rotting foundation. We often think strength is something born from victory, but in truth, the deepest part of strength is forged from the times we fall, yet decide to stand back up. Some people have beautiful smiles only because they have wept in the darkness for so long. Some souls become gentle only because they understand how much it hurts to be broken by life. Post-traumatic growth, the human capacity to develop more deeply after trauma. But the miracle does not lie in the pain itself. Pain does not automatically make one grow. It only opens a door. There are those who walk through that door and become more profound, more loving, and more appreciative of life. But there are also those who get trapped within their own shadow, letting hurt turn into bitterness. What defines a person is not how much they have suffered, but what they choose to do with that pain. A wound can become an excuse to destroy oneself, or it can become the place where the strongest compassion is built. The special thing about those who have been deeply hurt is that they often carry a very silent kind of strength, not showy, not loud, like a tree once bent by a storm, but whose roots have burrowed even deeper into the earth. They understand that life owes no one ease, so they learn to find peace even when things are far from perfect. They no longer naively believe the world is always fair, but they don't let harshness turn them cold. That is the most beautiful form of maturity, keeping a soft heart after seeing so much that would turn others to stone. And perhaps the most humane part of being human is that we don't grow strong by avoiding pain, but by learning to live with it without losing ourselves. Mental scars are not evidence of weakness. Sometimes they are the silent signature of survival. And somewhere in the depths of the soul, the parts that were once most shattered are exactly where a person becomes strongest, most authentic, and most loving. People spend too much time doing and not enough time thinking about what they should be doing. Naval Ravikant. Humans spend too much time working, but too little time reflecting on whether what they are doing is truly worth trading their life for. That is the quiet tragedy of this era. We become extremely busy, but no longer have enough stillness to ask ourselves where we are headed. Many wake up each morning like pre-programmed machines, answering messages, chasing deadlines, earning money, fulfilling responsibilities, only to end the day in exhaustion, without knowing why their souls still feel empty. Modern society worships productivity to the point where it makes people feel guilty just for stopping to think. But a life in constant motion without reflection is like a ship racing at full speed without a compass. The faster it goes, the easier it is to lose oneself. It is very easy to confuse activity with meaning. We often think that being busy equates to value, that a packed schedule proves importance. Busyness is sometimes just a sophisticated form of escape. By working non-stop, humans avoid facing the questions that cause unease. Am I living the life I truly desire? Does this make me happy? Or am I just living according to others' expectations? Many plunge into work as if plunging into noise, just so they don't have to hear the emptiness echoing inside them. There are those who spend their entire youth climbing a ladder, only to realize at the point of exhaustion that the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. They attain wealth, but lose their health. They gain recognition, but lose the feeling of being alive. They know how to survive, but they have forgotten how to feel life. And that is what makes modern humans so weary, not because they do too much, but because so much of what they do no longer connects with their soul. Deep thinking does not slow a person down. It helps them avoid wasting their life on meaningless races. 1 hour of sitting still to truly understand oneself is sometimes worth more than months of living unconsciously, because maturity is not about filling every minute with work, but being clear-headed enough to distinguish between what is merely taking up time and what is truly creating meaning. The world always pushes humans to do more, faster, better. But perhaps the most important question is much simpler. Is what I am dedicating my entire life to pursue truly worth it? We are all museums of fear. Charles Bukowski. Each person walks through their life like a silent, ancient building, housing hundreds of invisible artifacts within. A rejection at age 10, a cold glance from a loved one, a failure that made the heart shrivel like a scorched petal. People often think fear is something that appears when darkness falls. But in truth, it lives in the light of day, sitting beside us at the dinner table, creeping into every small decision, controlling how we love and how we avoid one another. Some fear abandonment, so they hold others too tightly. Some fear being hurt, so they turn their hearts into fortresses. And there are those whose fear runs so deep, they no longer realize if they are living to grow or just living to defend themselves. The strange thing is that humans rarely display their true fears. We often dress them in more polite clothes, calling control responsibility, calling coldness maturity, calling silence peace. But beneath that glossy paint, the soul still silently trembles like a room full of old paintings whenever the wind blows through. Most human behavior stems not from logic, but from unhealed emotional memories. A child who was once looked down upon may grow up with a hunger for recognition. Someone who once lost trust will learn to doubt even the most sincere gestures. We don't just remember with our brains. The body remembers too. The heart remembers too. And sometimes, an entire life is just an unconscious journey circling old wounds. But the beauty of being human lies there as well. Any museum can open its doors to the light. When a person is brave enough to look at their fear instead of running away, they begin to transform it into wisdom. Pain, if understood correctly, is no longer a shackle, but becomes the key that unlocks empathy. Those who have been lonely will know how to embrace others more gently. Those who have been shattered will learn to cherish fragile souls. We don't need to tear down the museum within us. We just need to stop living as its desperate guardian. Because in the end, it's not about becoming fearless, but about learning to walk calmly through the dark rooms of oneself and still being gentle enough to believe in the light. In a world of noise, silence is the ultimate rebellion. Donna D'Cruz. Every day, we are pulled away like stranded boats amidst a frantic tide of information, news, expectations, comparisons, ambitions, and the fear of being left behind. People learn to react faster than they feel. They learn to prove their worth instead of truly understanding who they are. In that whirlwind, silence becomes an abnormality, almost dangerous. A person sitting still amidst chaos confuses the world because they are no longer controlled by the common panic of the crowd. Humans are often addicted to busyness, not for efficiency, but for fear of facing the void within. Noise helps us forget the big questions. What am I living for? Why am I always tired? What is missing in this soul? Many choose to fill their lives with schedules, screens, and shallow conversations, like pasting colorful posters over a cracking wall. But silence is different. It is like an unforgiving mirror. When all sounds fade, humans begin to hear the footsteps of their own loneliness, unhealed wounds, and aspirations buried under years of living to please others. Maintaining composure amidst chaos is a rare form of strength. It is not indifference, but the ability to master one's inner world amidst the psychological storm of the era. A truly silent person does not need to win every argument to feel worthy. They do not let their emotions be manipulated by the gaze of others. They understand that peace is not something found in a place without suffering, but the ability to keep one's soul from shattering amidst that suffering. Just as the ocean floor is always calm, even as the surface screams with storms, the depth of a person is measured by their ability to remain silent before chaos. The most beautiful rebellion today is no longer screaming against the world, but protecting the silence of your soul from everything trying to invade it. In an age where everyone wants to be seen, the one who knows how to turn inward to understand themselves becomes the freest of all. Whatever you feel, you become. It is your responsibility. Osho, humans are not just made of what they think, but of the emotions they nurture every day, like a silent fire in the mind. A person who lives long in resentment will gradually take on the face of war. A person submerged in fear will see the world as a maze full of traps. And conversely, a soul that knows how to hold gratitude will emit a strange light, gentle, yet enough to make others feel at peace when standing near. Emotions are not harmless passing clouds. They are the climate of the inner self. Whatever sky we live under for too long, we will carry its colors. Most people do not realize how they are being led by their emotions. They think they are just a little sad, a little jealous, a little angry, but the mind operates like moist soil. Any seed planted repeatedly will take root. The brain gradually gets used to the states we frequently live in. If you nurture bitterness every day, the brain will learn to see everything through a negative lens. If you constantly feel worthless, the body begins to react as if you were truly insignificant in this life. Humans become the emotional version of themselves. They repeat most often, just as flowing water eventually carves its shape into stone. Responsibility is not the pressure to always be happy or fake a positive attitude. It is the alertness to recognize not every emotion deserves the power to control our lives. You have the right to hurt, but you don't need to build a house in that pain. You have the right to be disappointed, but you don't need to make disappointment your identity. Emotions are signals, not destiny. And anger can pass through the mind like rain passing through a city. The problem only begins when we open the door and let it stay too long. When a person learns to filter the emotions they nurture, they begin to recreate their own spiritual fate, because inner energy always spreads. Those who live in peace will create peace. Those who carry chaos will sow chaos. And ultimately, life does not only reflect what we do, but also what we silently feel every day. So be careful with your inner world, because that place is not just where emotions pass through, it is where your future is being formed. Life has no limitations except the ones you make. Les Brown. The greatest prison for a human rarely lies in circumstances, but in how they view themselves. Many live their entire lives within invisible walls built of fear, insecurity, and memories of failure. They dare not love because they were once hurt. They dare not start because they once lost. They dare not step further because an old voice always echoes in their head. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve it. I'll just fail again. Over time, those thoughts are no longer fleeting. They become an identity. And the most dangerous thing is when people begin to see their shackles as a natural part of life. What we believe long enough will gradually become our psychological reality. A person who always thinks they are weak will act as if the world is too big to resist. A person who believes they cannot change will unconsciously give up every opportunity that could change them. That is why many don't fail due to lack of ability, but because they surrendered in their imagination long before life even tested them. Those mental limits are like the ropes tied to an elephant's leg since it was a calf. When grown, even though strong enough to snap them, it stands still not because the rope is strong, but because the memory of helplessness remains intact in its mind. But life is always much wider than our fears. Humans often underestimate their own capacity to endure, adapt, and be reborn. A heart that was once broken can still love again. Someone who was once lost can still start over from their own ashes. What limits us is not the darkness outside, but the belief that we were born to live in that darkness forever. When a person changes their self-perception, they almost change the entire way the world responds to them. Because true freedom doesn't begin when circumstances change. It begins the moment a person stops identifying themselves with their fear and their past. And perhaps the most beautiful thing about a human is the ability to overcome the version of themselves that once thought they couldn't. Life is not a closed door. It is more like an ocean so vast that many have never dared to swim far from the familiar waters. The greatest limits usually lie not in our feet, but in an imagination narrowed by doubt. When the mind opens, humans finally realize there are skies they mistook for ceilings for all those years. Don't bother just to be better than your contemporaries or predecessors. Try to be better than yourself. William Faulkner. Most human insecurity does not come from a lack of value, but from constantly measuring their lives by the light of others. In an era where success is displayed like giant billboards on social media, humans gradually lose the ability to listen to their own natural pace of development. They see others getting richer, more beautiful, more successful, and then unconsciously view their own lives as a shameful delay. But constant comparison does not create growth. It creates mental exhaustion. Because when always living in a race with others, a person will never feel like they are enough. The tendency to define self-worth through one's position in the eyes of others is a very subtle trap. It makes a person achieve great things, yet still feel empty just because someone else went further. It makes joy fragile because every victory can be spoiled by a new comparison. Humans no longer live to grow, but live to prove. But the essence of true maturity has never been about defeating others. A tree does not grow by looking at the tree next to it. It grows by planting its roots deeper into its own soil. When a person shifts their goal from being better than others to being better than the me of yesterday, life begins to change in a very different way. They are no longer obsessed with others' speed, but focus on their own depth. Even a small step forward becomes meaningful because it is evidence of inner transformation. The truly strong person is not the one always at the front of every race, but the one who can look back at their old self and realize, I have become more mature, calmer, and kinder. That is the kind of victory no one can take away. the most important journey of a lifetime lies not out there, but in the silent dialogue with oneself. Every day, we are fighting procrastination, fear, doubt, old habits, and the invisible limits within our minds. The greatest winner is not the one cheered by the whole world, but the one who gradually becomes the version they once thought they could never be. Because ultimately, life is not a competition to see who goes furthest past others, but a journey to see if we are brave enough to overcome ourselves. A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. Jackie Robinson. We are often taught to be successful, to be prominent, and to build an admirable life. But in the end, what remains in the memory of others is rarely the money we earned or the titles we possessed. What stays longest is the feeling we leave in others' hearts, a kindness at the right time, a hug when someone was about to collapse, or a sentence that made a desperate soul decide to keep living for one more day. Humans are not truly remembered for how much they had, but for how many hearts they touched. Human fulfillment often comes not from personal indulgence, but from the feeling of being useful to others. A person can meet every standard of success, yet remain empty if their life does not truly connect with anyone, because human nature was not born to exist as isolated islands. We need to be seen, heard, influenced, and to belong. That is why sometimes just a small action can save a life. A word of encouragement can become a bridge for someone standing on the edge of a mental precipice. An act of understanding can heal a wound that years of loneliness could not. We often underestimate the power of our presence in others' lives. Like a candle that does not realize its light can help someone find their way in the dark. The most beautiful thing is that a great impact rarely starts with great things. It starts with how we treat people every day. There are those who walk through others' lives like a storm, leaving hurt and coldness in their wake. But there are also those who walk into a room and make others feel they are allowed to be weak, allowed to be themselves. That is the deepest form of influence, not controlling anyone, but making them feel that life still has enough tenderness to trust. A meaningful life does not necessarily have to change the whole world. Sometimes, just changing one person's world is extraordinary enough. When looking back, what makes a life immortal is not what we kept for ourselves, but the parts of our hearts we gave away. Because ultimately, the true meaning of existence lies not in how long we lived, but in how much our presence made others' lives warmer. The older you get, the more you understand how fragile life is. I think that's a good motivation to wake up every day with joy. Julia Roberts. When young, humans often live as if time were infinite. We delay loving, delay apologies, and delay our own happiness, always thinking there will be a more suitable day. But age is like a lamp that gradually reveals the true nature of life. Everything is temporary. Those who once sat beside us at the table may one day disappear. Familiar streets will eventually change. Even our once strong bodies silently learn how to grow weary. And it is exactly that fragility that makes us begin to look at life through different eyes, softer, deeper, and more appreciative. When realizing life is short, many do not become pessimistic. On the contrary, they begin to live more authentically. When people understand their time is not infinite, they stop wasting energy on shallow things. They try less to prove themselves, are less obsessed with the recognition of others, and begin to prioritize things that bring true meaning. A meal with family, a quiet afternoon, a sincere conversation, or simply the feeling of still being able to wake up and breathe. There are joys that youth often takes for granted, but after passing through enough loss, one realizes they were once blessings. The fragility of life is like the thin morning dew on a leaf. It is because it can vanish at any moment that it becomes so beautiful. If humans were immortal, perhaps no one would value time. If everything lasted forever, perhaps no one would learn to love deeply. We suffer because everything will eventually be lost, but that very fact makes every moment valuable. A hug becomes sacred because we don't know how many more times there will be. A sunset becomes beautiful because it always ends. Life is not precious because it is perfect, but because it is finite. And perhaps when people stop living as if they will be here forever, it's not to fear time, but to be grateful for it. Waking up each morning is no longer a given, but another chance to love, to mend, to feel the sun on one's skin, and the laughter of those we can still meet. When understanding how fragile life is, we no longer want to live hurriedly. We only want to live deeply. Now, it's the little moments that make me stop, because that's the meaning of life. Joanna Gaines. When young, we often think the meaning of life lies in grand things, resounding success, proud milestones, the moments that make the whole world look at us. But then time teaches a very quiet lesson. Most true happiness does not arrive like fireworks, but arrives like the warm light in a late-night kitchen, gentle, ordinary, yet making the heart feel it belongs somewhere. Modern humans spend their entire lives chasing peaks and forget that life actually happens in the very small details. A morning still hearing a mother's voice, an unconscious hand hold from a loved one, the sound of rain against the window late at night, the familiar scent of coffee on a weary day. Those things may not seem great, but they are the silent threads sewing life into something worth remembering. Lasting happiness usually doesn't come from grand events, but from ordinary moments with deep emotional connection, because the heart does not measure value by the magnitude of an event. It measures by the level of presence and love. The sad thing is that many only realize the beauty of small things after they have lost them. We often take the presence of loved ones as a given until a familiar chair in the house stands empty. We often think there will be time for conversations later, until later no longer comes. Life does not shatter in one big moment. It erodes as people stop feeling the simple things around them. We are too busy becoming someone to the point of forgetting how to truly live. There comes a time when one learns the art of stopping to look at the sunlight on the floor, stopping to listen to an old song that softens the heart, stopping to realize that peace is not a destination to be found, but the ability to sense the beauty of the present before it disappears. Small moments are not small at all. They are the vast part of life we once passed by too quickly. Looking back, one may forget many achievements reached, but will remember very clearly the feeling of a peaceful afternoon spent with a loved one, because the meaning of life has never lain entirely in the things that make us admired. It lies in the very small things that make the heart truly feel alive.